Hello and welcome to This Day in History. It is July 14th, 2024. Not that that really matters about the year because it's all about the date and what has happened on this date in the past. As always, we have some pretty interesting stuff today. We have a presidential birthday. We have a people of the arts have birthdays today. We have just a bunch of interesting people having done interesting things on this day. We also have quite a few things happening internationally on this day. So let's just get into it, shall we? So first off, birthdays. There's just a few of them this time around. First birthday, we start with 1862. We see the birth of Gustav Klimt, Klimt. He was an Austrian painter. Next, we have, 50 years later, we have the birth of Woody Guthrie in 1912. Woody Guthrie was an American singer. He was a songwriter. He was known for kind of like folk music, and I remember reading about him in high school, and it said that his music only had no more. He played guitar, and he had no more than 4 chords in any one of his songs, and he had gone on to record to say is that if you are playing more than 4 chords in a song, you are just showing off. It was vanity. So how music has changed since his day. He was featured in The Grapes of Wrath. The book talked about his music because he was well established and well known back in that era. When the book was written, it was written about the Great Depression era, and he had been in his 20s by then. So he was. He's also credited to have been the inspiration for Bob Dylan in a lot of his music. He was inspired by Woody Guthrie quite a bit. And when you listen to Bob Dylan's music, it has a very grassroots, old style to the music. It feels very much like folk music. And so Woody Guthrie was an inspiration for him in his music. So a year later, we have the birth of Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford was an American president. He succeeded Nixon when Nixon resigned. He was President Nixon's vice president when Nixon resigned due to the Watergate scandal. Gerald Ford took over. And then Gerald Ford's very first act was to pardon Nixon of any wrongdoing that he may have had. They had the impeachment trial, or process rather. They're going to get rid of Nixon. They're going to oust him. Nixon gets ahead of it by by resigning his office, and in all likelihood made a deal with Ford. So Ford went and pardoned him, gave him a presidential pardon, and basically just put the kibosh on any investigation that would have been ongoing against him, because it's a pardon. So any conviction that there ever would have been had, it was already squashed by means of pardon. On the flip side to that killed Ford's career, because when he ran for re-election, and Jimmy Carter beat him. Jimmy Carter ran for re-election and was beat by Reagan, because Jimmy Carter is a great human being. I love the man. I absolutely love the man. Despite the fact that he's been a card carrying Democrat his whole life, not I'm not affiliated to any party. In fact, I think both parties are morally bankrupt. But my biggest thing with Carter, when looking through the lens of history and looking at his presidency, is that he was very lax on terrorism as it was starting to take a foothold in the world. He had a golden opportunity to try to stamp it out before it got started. It basically, stamping out that fire before it became a raging inferno. And he really didn't have a really good foreign policy to deal with such a thing. Great humanitarian, just he sucked at foreign policy, unfortunately. So anyway, that's kind of a rabbit trail. But today is the birthday of President Gerald Ford, who was born on this day in 1913. 5 years later, you have a Swedish film director by the name of Ingmar Bergman. I've heard the name. I might have actually seen some of Bergman's films. I'm not sure, but I do remember the name. The name sounds very familiar to me. The last birthday we have is in 1960. Jane Lynch. She is an American actress and a comedian. She is funny and raunchy all at the same time. She was 40-Year-Old Virgin, the movie 40-Year-Old Virgin. She was the manager of the store that Steve Carell's character worked at. So, what was that movie that Paul Rudd was in? Role Models. She was in that movie too. She was like a camp director or youth program director or something like that. Anyway, that's the birthdays. So, happy birthday, Jane. So the first date in history, we're going back to 1865. British mountaineer Edward Whymper, Whymper. He was the first person to ever climb the Matterhorn, and the Matterhorn is a mountain in the Swiss Alps. 1881. If we're going by what history tells us, today is the day that Billy the Kid was shot dead by Pat Garrett, Sheriff Pat Garrett. If we believe any of the conspiracy theories, it is Pat Garrett. Oh, Pat Garrett shot someone on this day in 1881, but the rumor has it that it wasn't Billy the Kid, it was somebody else, and then he rushed the burial to, like hush hush. He rushed the burial to kind of make up for the accidental killing of somebody else, and they kind of made an agreement. He and Billy made an agreement. It's like, you disappear, don't ever come back ever. And I've already shot this guy, so I'm just going to tell them that this guy is you, and you go away and never come back. Pat Garrett was killed many years later. I think it was like 1912 or somewhere around. I can't remember. Pat Garrett was killed. He had a book written, and he explained how Billy was his friend, and then he was hired to hunt him down. And basically, it was bounty hunter work, and he hunted him down and he killed him. Of course, if you know the legend of Brushy Bill Roberts out of Hiko, Texas, Brushy Bill was someone who claimed to have been Billy the Kid, and wanted his president or his governor's pardon before he died, and that was in 1950. So, I mean, Billy would have been like a very, very old man by then. 50, 70. He probably would have been in his 90s or something like that. So yeah, allegedly, Billy the Kid was shot and killed on this day in 1881. In 1921, there's a controversial court decision here. So what happens is a couple of Italian immigrant anarchists by the names of Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Bart Vanzetti. They were found guilty of murdering 2 men in Massachusetts. I don't really know the circumstances of why it was such a controversial decision to convict these 2 guys. I mean, if they were anarchists and they actually killed 2 people, then yeah, I'm sure that I'm missing something here. The year that Jane Lynch was born, 1960, British ethologist Jane Goodall. She arrives in Tanzania in what's now known as the Gombe Stream National Park. She started conducting groundbreaking research on chimpanzees. Oh, was she also the same person that mysteriously disappeared in the African jungles? Something about the gorillas. She was fighting with people, like illegal poaching of silverbacks, whatever. She was trying. If it's the same person I'm thinking of, she had established she would live in the wild, and she had established a great rapport with all manner of apes. Whether it's, Goodall here had an amazing rapport with chimpanzees. If this is the person I'm thinking of, Gorillas in the Mist was the name of the movie in the 80s. Sigourney Weaver played her. I'm not sure if it was the same person or not, but she told people to get off her mountain and to leave the gorillas alone, and the gorillas actually protected her. They were, if you got aggressive with this woman whatsoever and the gorillas saw it, I mean, they would come unhinged because they absolutely loved her. She had a great rapport with these silverback gorillas. But I can't remember if the woman I'm thinking of was Jane Goodall. I can't remember. Yeah. 1968, American baseball great Hank Aaron hits his 500th career home run. A year later, Easy Rider, the movie Easy Rider, is released in U.S. theaters, and that movie really propelled a very young Jack Nicholson into stardom. Others that were in that movie, Jon Voight, I think, was in that movie. Peter Fonda was in that movie. It was, there were a lot of, people I think of as megastars from my childhood and beyond, were in that movie. So, kind of an older generation. I guess you could say my mother's generation of actors, that up and coming actors, and I didn't do it. Fire department just went by. So that happened in 2013, or 1969 rather. 2013. This is fascinating. So the world's last telegram was sent. Telegram, right? So this is like ancient history. Like, telegrams were being sent in the 1770s, 1780s, 90s, up until wide use of the telephone, right? Well, in 2013, the world's last telegram was sent, and it was in India's state-run telecommunications company. And so today, it was this day in 2013 that they sent their very last telegram, as they had ended their telegraph service. I didn't know that there were still nations out there that were still utilizing the telegraph, because with the advent of telecommunications, cell phones and such being what they are now, that I would have thought that older technology was just, completely done. But you learn something every day. 2016, we see a terrorist attack. Now, this specific terrorist attack that happened on this day, it was the third attack in 18 months in France. Now, it was Nice, spelled nice. Nice, France, is where this terrorist attack happened. And I remember this. A man drove like one of those big cargo vans, like something the size of a Sprinter or something like that. And he drove, unless it was a box truck, I mean, it just says that he drove a truck into a crowd. They were celebrating Bastille Day, and I have another about that here momentarily. They were celebrating Bastille Day in Nice. 80 people were killed and hundreds more were injured in this attack. Pretty brutal stuff. I don't know why people seem to think that terrorism is okay. Anyone who thinks that terrorist activity is okay, you either need some serious counseling or you need to be removed off the face of the earth, because harming another human being there's no justifiable reason for it. In 2017, Iranian mathematician Miriam Mirzakhani, Mirzakhanai. She died at the age of 40. But the interesting thing about Miriam was that not only was she the first woman, but she was the first Iranian to be awarded the Fields Medal. And I looked that up, and what the Fields Medal is, it's the equivalent to a Nobel Prize for the field of for mathematicians and that kind of stuff. There was a field of study that she had her work in is what had gained her that medal. And I'd looked it up, but then I didn't stop to write it down. So I know I'm just horrible like that. That concludes this day in history, for the exception of the featured event, which I'm going to go through now. We go back to 1789. This is Bastille Day, right? So what was Bastille Day? Well, this event is what is the catalyst of that. The Bastille, which was a prison outside of Paris, the Bastille was stormed by a Parisian mob. The mob had demanded arms and ammunitions that were stored there. Now, when the guards refused, they resisted. The crowd doubled down, and they captured the prison. And if I'm understanding it right, if I'm reading it right, this event is basically the kickoff to the French Revolution. If I'm understanding it right, it's around the same time period when the French Revolution kicks off. Is about this time. It was putting an end to what they called the ancient regime. And when I clicked on ancient regime to see what they were talking about, essentially what they're talking about was that it was the end of the French monarchy. The French monarchy in favor of something more of a republic flavor. However, they didn't exactly have a republic flavor, because it wasn't long after the French Revolution and they deposed the king that Napoleon takes over, and he's emperor. He was the emperor of France. And so, he basically just replaced the monarchy with his brand of aristocracy. But eventually when they got rid of Napoleon, when he was defeated and he was exiled and they got rid of him, eventually France kind of followed suit with what the United States did, and they created their own republic. You fast forward today, and while they still have free elections, they have a president, they have a prime minister, or whatever it is. I think they have a president. They, on paper, they're a republic, but they really do. They behave more like a democracy, which, I mean, I've done other videos on this before, and, everyone talks about, just recently, Chuck Schumer had said, that putting Trump back in office would be the death of our democracy. You're absolutely right, because the United States is not a democracy. It never has been a democracy. It will never be a democracy, so long as the U.S. Constitution is still the law of the land. We are a constitutional republic. There is a difference. Sorry, Mitch, you're wrong. We are not a democracy. We've never been a democracy. While we have a democratic way of electing our officials, that is not democracy. While we have a democratic way of like a voting system and representative government, yes, democracies do have a representative government like we do. The difference is, and here's the main difference between a democracy and a republic, is that a republic has a constitution that where your rights are guaranteed and can never be stripped of you. Whereas in a democracy, the state can arbitrarily decide to strip certain freedoms and certain rights as it is deemed necessary. So, now, have we behaved like a democracy in our nation's history? Okay, then I could agree with that yes, we have, but we are not a democracy. We are not a true democracy. President Lincoln had suspended habeas corpus during the Civil War. Habeas corpus is, if you know, that is the right to a fair and speedy trial. Because there was a lot of potential espionage due to the nature of the Civil War, so the United States was under martial law during the conflict, so certain things had to be suspended. You could say that the Patriot Act was probably an example of a democracy, even though it never should have come into existence. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I liked Bush, and at the time I supported the Patriot Bill, or the Patriot Act, because in lieu of what happened with 9/11, it gave more broader powers. It relieved restrictions of law enforcement to do their job. The downside to it is that it really trampled on Fourth Amendment rights, Fifth Amendment rights, and that's where I take an issue with it. So as I educated myself more on what the Patriot Act had empowered law enforcement to do, the more sickened of it I was, because I was a cop's son, and that particular cop taught me to observe the law, to obey the law, to respect the law, not to abuse the law. And the Patriot Act was an abuse of the law, in my opinion. So, but we are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. Our constitutional republic dictates that our rights have been given to us by God, and that no government can strip us of those rights. So, when you go vote, first of all, I would say this to anybody: vote your conscience, right? Yesterday, July 13th, 2024, we had an attempted presidential assassination attempt on Trump. Presidential because he's a former president. He's running for president. There was an assassination attempt on his life. Failed, thankfully. And to be fair, if a similar situation had happened to Biden, I would have said the same thing. I'm glad that it didn't happen. I personally am not a Biden fan. But I'm not going to go out there and say he's not my president. He is. He was elected. He's our president. Do I want him to fail? Absolutely not. All right. And let me be clear about this. Is like, when you advocate for the failure of your president, you are advocating for the failure of your nation. And you, as the citizen, you're advocating for your own failure. When he fails, when the president fails, he or she, speaking future tense as well, if they fail, we all fail. When they succeed, we all succeed. So, and we should want our leaders to succeed, despite whether they're on the opposite side of the political spectrum from you. Okay, so with that said, it doesn't matter whether it was Trump that was they're trying to kill Trump, or whether someone would try to kill Biden. I would have the same vehement attitude of take that bastard down. Because Biden said it best yesterday, and I have to give him props for what he said. Biden said it best yesterday when he said something to the effect of, that kind of violence has no place here in the United States. Bravo, Mr. President. I actually agree with you. I don't agree with a lot of your policies, but what you said, it resonates true. There is no place for that kind of violence. Just because you don't like someone, vote for the other guy. That's all I'm saying. So, kind of a rabbit trail there, but we live in a country where we have the freedom of speech, we have the freedom of religion, we have the freedom of the press, we have the freedom of the right to bear arms, we have the freedom of not being required to quarter soldiers. That's the Third Amendment. We have the right to freedom against illegal searches and seizures. We have the right to not self-incriminate. And I'm drawing a blank on 6, 7, 8. 9 and 10 are about states' rights, individual, like states' rights versus federal rights. But I'm drawing a blank on the others. Sorry. But those rights are the nucleus of who we are as a nation. And according to our founding fathers, the first 10 amendments, our Bill of Rights, these are our God-given rights, meaning no man can take them from us. The government can't take them from us, or they shouldn't be allowed to take them from us. And I would say to this, when you go to the voting polls in November, and when you're voting, bear in mind, the people that you're voting for, look at their track record, look at who they are, look at what they support. If they support any means of removing your rights that our founding fathers said that can never be taken from you, that's a person, in my opinion, that's a person you should not be voting for. You should be voting for someone who's going to protect your individual liberty. So that's what I would encourage. That's what I would admonish. But Gene Simmons said it best. America, vote your conscience. Vote for who you think is going to do the best job. Vote your conscience. And we may disagree on who we vote for, and that's fine. I'm going to respect you for voting your conscience, and I just ask that you would respect me for voting mine. And I'm a constitutionalist, so I'm always going to vote for someone who I believe is going to truly uphold the ideals and principles of the Constitution, because that's who we are as Americans. When you really delve into the Constitution, it was all about giving us freedom and maintaining that freedom. And newsflash, freedom isn't free. It does cost us. So I would just encourage that for you. And sorry for the long tangent. Again, a half-hour video. My bad. Apologies. But take care. Be blessed. We will do this again tomorrow for July 15th. So, yeah. Talk to you later.